This video was sponsored by Shopify. I'll have a link for you to try their services out for free at the end of this video. I can barely remember the last time I watched a launch event for a phone or any device that wasn't thoroughly leaked weeks or sometimes months in advance. And over the years, these leaks have gotten progressively bigger to the point where we sometimes know everything there is to know about a product before it even gets announced. But what I find the most interesting is seeing how companies who were originally fighting to avoid them have sort of started embracing them and started creating their own leaks and teasers for their own devices. So in the 57th episode of the Story Behind series, let's take a look at how companies started embracing leaks. There are many kinds of leaks and teasers across the industry. Sometimes people somewhere in the supply chain manage to smuggle out a photo of a device. Sometimes external people dig around and find unreleased product pages or bits of source code that reference something. And every now and then, an actual shipment of devices end up on the black market ahead of the launch and get complete video reviews, like what happened to the Google Pixel 3, for example. Nowadays, it's a little hard to say which of these were actual leaks by rogue actors and which were just carefully planted by management, but I think it's pretty easy to see that the default stance of companies is, or at least used to be, to try to avoid leaks altogether. Employees are constantly threatened in internal memos, they get fired, and sometimes even go to jail over leaking stuff, and it's not hard to see why. Companies usually really want to control when and how information gets released about their products, because they want to create a narrative around the product that makes you focus on the bits that they think are important and kind of forget about the parts that they'd rather not have you think about. But also so that competitors don't really know what they'll be competing against. And so historically, they've tried to keep all of the announcements for one big launch event, which allowed them to do exactly that. But over time, avoiding leaks became harder and harder as lots of potential sources entered the picture. Supply chains of tech companies have become huge, and more processes are given to companies around the world, which becomes extremely difficult to control and opens doors for loads of supply chain leaks. Devices being sold globally also means that they need to be certified by tons of different authorities, mobile carriers, and retailers around the world ahead of their launch, giving us tons of leaks like these. People started expecting to have phone cases and other accessories to be ready at launch, meaning that case makers need to be involved early on, and the list just goes on. As products and their distribution have become more complex, the number of potential sources for leaks has dramatically increased as well. At the same time, finding and publishing leaks also became a profitable business, and dedicated leaking channels started to appear who would feed leaks to hungry consumers and make money while doing so. And with supply and demand for leaks both on the rise, it became almost impossible to stop them. So naturally, some companies decided that instead of fighting the leaks, they would just start embracing them. And I've really found three different strategies that these companies have adopted. The first, and probably least impressive one, is what I would call reactive damage control. The Google Pixel line is probably the most obvious example of this, where all 4 generations of phones in the line got so thoroughly leaked there was almost nothing to talk about at their launch events. With the Pixel 3, things got so bad the company started its launch event like this.
The Pixel can't stop leaking.
We pretty much know everything there is to know about a Pixel 3 as well as the Pixel 3 XL.
We have a very clear image now of this Pixel 3.
Obviously not a great look, and so when it became clear that they couldn't keep the Pixel 4 from leaking either, they decided to instead just address the leaks head on. Specifically, they confirmed the rear design with a new dual camera module, as well as their new spatial tracking tech called Project Soli, multiple months ahead of the official release of the phone. Now you might wonder why they picked these 2 features to confirm, and I think it's to address people's negative criticism of early leaks. People were complaining that the front bezel and the camera bump looked huge, so people let everyone know that there's a reason for those. They are, after all, holding all of the new sensor technology. And while that probably still is better than just letting people figure out everything on their own just from leaks, I feel like this way of just reacting to existing leaks shows that Google doesn't really have much of a PR strategy to deal with this whole big mess that they're in. Compare that to strategy number 2, which is best displayed by OnePlus. Here, a company doesn't just wait for incoming leaks to confirm, instead it proactively creates teasers for their own devices, months in advance. The idea being that if people are gonna start talking about your devices anyway, why not just control the narrative? OnePlus started with their first phone ever, where one by one they released each of their core specs in advance, created teaser unboxing videos with some key custom ROM makers, invited people to shoot and release sample photos from the phone, and so on. And they've been doing essentially the same thing with their first TV as well, teasing one feature after another months ahead of launching the device. This controlled and proactive teasing allows them to create a strategy and to space out the announcements in a way they give them a new media cycle every week for months on end. It's great free PR, and it also lets them play a couple of really interesting tricks. For example, with the OnePlus One, they first announced the phone to cost below $500, then below $400, then below 350 euros, and finally announced the phone for $299, which really focused people's attention on affordability. Another unintuitive but super clever trick that OnePlus and a couple of other companies have figured out is that they can pre-announce or just leak some of the most undesirable features of an upcoming product, like the design of the OnePlus 5, which many, including myself, felt looked way too much like an iPhone knockoff. Getting the bad news out early lets people rant about it for weeks, so the topic gets old, and by the time the actual launch event happens and the pre-order pages go up, people instead focus on the new stuff that was just announced. Stuff like that is possible with a careful, proactive teasing strategy. And while I personally find the constant teasing for something as basic as a smart TV, for example, quite boring, I have to say it's probably a smart move. Okay, strategy number 3 is companies either teasing or sort of intentionally leaking a breakthrough technology that will eventually make it to smartphones but isn't quite production ready yet. A prime example of this, of course, would be Oppo teasing their 5x optical zoom periscope camera tech at MWC 2 years before it actually came to any phone. And another one would be Oppo doing the exact same thing with their 50-watt ultra-fast charging tech called SuperVOOC a year earlier. Showing off early technologies like this is super risky, as a company is kind of giving away their game plan to competitors. But it can have some really positive effects too. Of course, companies get a bunch of good press from it, which is nice, but maybe more importantly, they also get to show the world that they, if played well, have technological superiority in a specific field. Tech companies especially need that kind of show of strength because it allows them to attract key talent who really only wants to work in the best companies, it allows them to attract more investment from outside investors, and it allows them, in some cases, to scare off competitors. Here's an example of that. When I worked for Oppo and I demoed the SuperVOOC charging tech at their booth, because yes, that's me when I still had hair, I literally had hundreds of engineers from Samsung, Huawei, LG, and all of the other competitors come and inspect my demo. I could see them being completely blown away by Oppo's 50-watt fast charging, when back then, even 20-watt charging seemed the bleeding edge. In my opinion, this was a way for Oppo to show their competitors that they're just so much ahead of what the others are doing, so that those competitors shouldn't really invest their money into this specific field because they wouldn't catch up with Oppo in a meaningful time frame anyway. So in a way, with pre-announcing this technology, Oppo tried to shape the competitive landscape. Now, of course, there are a few more reasons for leaks that I haven't really covered yet. So, for example, some companies create like fake leaks to either confuse competitors or to try to catch employees who would leak things out. But I think I covered the most important ones. And now a little behind the scenes update. So fans of my channel will know that I've been selling merchandise, like this t-shirt for example, for a while now. And I'm really happy to finally be able to show you the platform that has been powering this business ever since I started it. Selling any merchandise starts with a web shop like this, listing products obviously. And everything on my merch store is powered by Shopify. Setting up an entire online store like this takes less than a day using their tools because managing products is as easy as changing titles, descriptions, and images, adjusting sizes and quantities. Even tweaking how a product appears in search is done from here really easily. There are robust analytics, so you can see how much each item has sold over time. Accepting payments of all sorts and launching online ad campaigns are made easy. There is 24/7 customer support if you ever get stuck, and a whole lot more. If you want to sell anything online, you should probably do it using Shopify, especially because you can try it out now for free for 14 days using my link in the description of this video. While you're there, maybe also consider getting my merch. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.